Most people think that eating healthy requires calorie counting, buying everything organic, or no longer eating their favorite foods. I know this because this is something I once thought. So in today's video, we are talking about 3 reasons why healthy eating may feel overwhelming and how to simplify healthy eating so it fits your life. So the first reason why healthy eating may feel overwhelming is that you're not eating foods that you actually enjoy. I ended up running across this situation when I had transitioned to a vegan lifestyle back in 2019. And so because I was changing up the foods that I was eating, a couple of things that I would get often and then never eat was eggplant and tempeh. So I was like trying to add more variety of things to incorporate into my diet. The only issue that I found was that I never really ate the eggplant. And when it came to tempeh, I've tried it so many different times that I'm like, I really just don't like tempeh. And I would hear people talk about how good tempeh is and how amazing the flavor is and all the protein that it has in it. But I was just like, I couldn't eat it. And one thing that I started to realize was like, I cut out foods just because it fit into a particular type of diet, but I was cutting out foods that I actually enjoyed. So I really actually enjoyed eggs. I wasn't like the biggest fan of chicken, but depending on how the chicken was made, I would enjoy it. And then when I was trying to do a more whole food diet, then it was like also cutting out pasta and bread, which were 2 other things that I really enjoyed the most. And I feel like when I was doing that, it was making it much more complicated of me actually staying healthy. So one thing that I had started doing was just eating the foods that I enjoy, but then just finding a healthier way of eating them. And I think a lot of times it's like when it comes to healthy eating, it's just like this major swap that we have to do, especially when I see like videos of like, instead of eating chips, eat like cucumbers with hummus. And I find it to be the most irritating thing in the world. Because I'm like, if you're just going to tell me to eat cucumbers and hummus, duh, I could have figured that out myself of just eating cucumbers and hummus. Clearly, I prefer the chips over cucumbers and hummus. And so me learning about like how to make a swap to that just didn't make any sense. And I hated when I saw stuff like that. So instead of trying to remove certain things from your diet, ask yourself if the foods that you're incorporating into your diet is actually foods that you enjoy eating. Because if you don't really enjoy eating it, it's going to become harder for you to stay consistent with it. So for me, one thing that I don't eat a lot of it now, it's pretty interesting because I don't really eat a lot of it now anymore. But 2 things that I really enjoyed was pasta and bread. Like I was a carbs lover. I love me some refined carbs. It just always tasted really good. The only thing is that refined carbs tends to lead to weight gain and is not usually the healthiest. But one thing that I just started to do along when I was first in the beginning of my journey of eating healthier was switching from like certain types of breads to then whole wheat bread. And I wasn't really a fan of whole wheat bread. I'm still not really a fan of whole wheat bread, but then I did run across Ezekiel bread, which I really actually enjoy. And they also have an English muffin version, which like I finished that completely. So I would definitely get more of that, but I didn't remove bread completely. I just found a healthier way of eating it. Another thing was when it comes to ramen and pasta. Now, pasta was something I also ate a lot often. I just don't eat it often as much now. But one thing that I did in the beginning when it came to eating pasta was I would just add a lot of vegetables or beans to my pasta instead of just like completely removing pasta, because it's like that type of taste that I still get, but then I'm eating less of the actual refined pasta because I'm getting the nutrients from the beans or the vegetables that I'm eating with it. And another thing then that I started doing was just finding healthier pastas. So now I'm much more cautious of the types of pastas that I get. And when it comes to ramen, I used to get like that cheap version of the ramen, but then one thing that I just started doing instead was not using the packets and then just using my own types of seasoning for the ramen. Then I started adding vegetables to the ramen, and then I just started finding healthier ramens. So one reason why healthy eating may feel overwhelming is that you're not eating foods that you enjoy and you feel like you need to now remove everything that you enjoy, when really you just have to find healthier ways of enjoying the foods that you actually love. The next reason why healthy eating may feel overwhelming is that that you're trying to implement everything at once. There's just so much information out there when it comes to like healthy eating, of like when it comes to gut health foods, and then brain health foods, and then protein, and then fiber, and then eating them in the right order, new foods that are now on a commercial. There's just so much information when it comes to healthy eating that if you try to take in all of that information at once, it is going to feel overwhelming. One thing that really worked for me is just focusing on one thing at a time. So if you watched my other video where I talk about how I transitioned from processed foods to whole foods, that was literally the route that I took. And I didn't try to overwhelm myself with so much information, because I knew if I did that, then I would just go back into old habits and then I would never figure out what actually worked. So one thing to do is, if you're trying to implement so much things at once, just focus on one thing at a time. Whether it's to quit processed foods, eat less fast food, if it's eating less processed snacks, as if it's finding healthier processed snacks, if it's working on incorporating more gut health foods into your diet. I think when you just focus on one area at a time, it then helps you build those, not even just like the level of consistency of like eating healthier, but it also adapts and changes up your taste buds. And then you learn what's working and what's not. So for me, I know if I started with quitting processed foods to where I'm at now, I wouldn't know what is actually working and what actually I could stay consistent with and why I'm making those changes, because I tried to do too much too soon off of what information someone else is telling me. Because you have plenty of people that's like, oh, this diet is the best diet, oh, this diet is the best diet, this diet is the best diet, but everyone's body is different. So that may be the best diet for them, but that may not be the best diet for you. And for them, like no longer eating any type of processed foods is probably the golden answer for their lives, and now they just make everything from scratch. But you may not have the time to make everything from scratch or want to make everything from scratch. So it's now finding what works for your lifestyle of when do you eat processed snacks, what kind of processed snacks you get, and then how to pair that with a healthier item so then you're not overeating on it. I think many times we just take in so much information that we don't know where to start, and then that's where it becomes confusing on how to make progress, because we don't feel the effects. It's hard for us to feel the effects of like what is actually working and the positive changes we're making, because we're trying to do all these things at once, that the only feeling that we have is overwhelm instead of like feeling healthier. So another thing is, instead of trying to implement everything at once, just focus on one area at a time. And the last one is that you are not cooking aligned with your lifestyle. So this one I think is something where it's definitely an individual type of thing that we have to learn about ourselves, because there's been plenty of recipes where I save them. Like I like going on Instagram for recipe ideas. I feel like TikTok is just way too much for me. It's too overstimulating for me. So I know some people like find recipes on TikTok. For me, it's too much. So I like going on Instagram. The only thing is like some of them like have the cute videos, but I'm like, just show me the goddamn recipe. I don't need all the cute stuff. Just show me the goddamn recipe. But that's just me. But there's plenty of recipes that I've saved on Instagram to where I'm like, this will be so cute to make, but I have to be really in the mood to make them. Like for instance, one thing that I've been really wanting to make lately is bagels. But then I think about the having to rise the flour and having to set and put it all together. And even though it's like simple like steps, I'm like, I have to really be in Betty Crocker mood. And sometimes I'm just not in Betty Crocker mood. But then there are other recipes that I find and I like them. I have the ingredients for them and I'm able to do them like the next week, because it's something where it doesn't take up too much time. The ingredients are simple and I know that I can make this and enjoy making it and eat it throughout the week. So I think it's really important of knowing what is your ideal cooking preference. So for me personally, even when it comes to like crock pot recipes, I'm not a crock pot person. I know I had an old coworker who loved having her crock pot and loved having making her meals in it and then just like having it cook and then going about her way. To me personally, I'm more of an oven and a stove person. So any type of recipe that I look at, it has to require either an oven or a stove or my air fryer. But even when it comes to my air fryer, I'm really like, it depends, because then I have to like take out the air fryer and then clean the air fryer after. And it's just like extra work. But with like a pan or like putting anything in the oven, I just take the foil and then throw it away. Another thing is when it comes to time, it's just like I don't want to have to do something where it requires way too much prepping of it or it requires a blender. Once I see a blender in a recipe, it diminishes. It like my soul just drops because I just don't have the energy to want to do that. But it looks good, and then I have inspiration of making it, and then sometimes I buy the ingredients to make it and then just never make it. But then I buy the ingredients in a way where I could still use it for something else just in case I don't use it for that recipe. But another thing that I think many times may feel overwhelming is like you're not doing the cooking that matches with your lifestyle. So if you're someone who prefers crock pot recipes, then focus on crock pot recipes. If you're someone who enjoys just putting something in the oven while you work, so that way when it's finished cooking in the oven, you just take it out and eat it, focus on those type of recipes. If you're someone who enjoys just like making a big pot of something and then having it on a stove and then cooking, have those type of recipes that you look at. When we try to go and look for healthy recipes, but they're outside of our cooking method, number one, it makes it harder for us to actually start because it's like now a new process we're not used to. Number two, it makes it harder to stay consistent with because that's not really our preference of cooking. And to us, we see like this recipe of healthy eating. So it's like, well, it requires this, I have to do this. When really it's just like, just save that for the future if that's something you're willing to do in the future. But for now, only look for recipes that's within your style of cooking. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm Alexandria, and I will see you in the next video.